time we're having. Can you believe it? This is Jeff Clay. Exactly how you see it. That's exactly the way life is. And I want you to drop by here and say hello as well. We've got the farm. We have got the Judson Tower. We've got it all for you. Indications that we have.
From Studio 12D of the AT&T Broadcast Complex, it's time for Jeff's Place, where it's just like Jeff's home, except here we have cameras. Stopping by on this special show will be Floyd Brown, Elgin's most well-known citizen and broadcaster to the nation. Now let's go to Jeff's Place.
Hey, here we are. We have kind of a different... Thank you, kids. First of all, I got to get two things out of the way. I've got too much sun over the weekend. How do I look?
Where did you go, Jeff?
I just went away for a couple of days and should not sleep out in the sun. It's a good lesson for the kids out there.
Under your lamp?
Yes. Yeah. It worked for Nixon, a little lamp like that. We have a very special formatted show with one of the legends in broadcast, and he lives right here in Elgin. Floyd Brown, it's his show.
And this is going to be the first time we've ever had somebody do the whole show.
Yes, he's the solo guest. We didn't take this theme show from the old Merv Griffin reruns. We knew we wanted to do this.
Merv who?
Oh, yeah, it's a long time back. So that's the special show we have here. So I'm not red-faced about that. I'm just delighted to see you.
There you go. But no, really, where did you go? I heard that you went to Vegas, didn't you?
Well, I don't get out as much as you think. I just popped my head out and then got that winter time. And as you can see right there, in the winter time, the sun is actually closer. Look at my face. So, there. I figured out that whole problem, haven't I? So what we have here with the Floyd show, enough of my patter.
Okay.
But you're delightful. Appreciate you being aboard. Lydia, happy birthday to Lydia of our staff.
23.
23. I have tapes older than that.
She's got a mother almost younger than us.
Yes, I wish we had more time to expound on that. We've got to get right to this, as our time control will tell us that we will indeed. What we have here is we have over the years to have videotaped some of the best speeches made by our own Floyd Brown. And to keep this in time order, we go back to Veterans Day 1998, just outside of the Hemmons Cultural Center. Floyd talks about his own military career. So this is Floyd Brown, Veterans Day 1998, and Floyd will be back on the set right after this.
Well, I belong to the BT-DT generation. Been there, done that. You live long enough, you've been there and done practically everything, and that essentially is where I am today. But in all the things that I've done, all the places that I've gone, all the experiences that I've had, at this stage of life, there's nothing more significant than the years I spent in the service of my country. Now, I'm not gung-ho. I didn't volunteer. I was drafted. When they called me, I went, and it made such an impact on my life. I can't forget it, and it was truly significant.
There we go. Now, Floyd, right from Images, right to you, Floyd.
Same guy. Huh?
Yes.
Same station.
See, we, again, as I told the folks when you were in the green room, that we'd taken all your great speeches and thought we'd start with that Veterans Day speech because that leads us in to, as we look at your life, Floyd Brown. We don't have that big book, but this is your life, Floyd.
This is my past.
We wanted to, you've been on with us from time to time. You've talked about being in Alaska, running the military radio station there, what an influence that was on your career itself. So,
Jeff, you're an amazing chronicler. You know more about me than I know myself. Historically here, you bring up things, and I admire your work too, and I really appreciate it, but if only I had your mind. Just a little
well, that can be arranged. Take it right there.
He has the capacity to remember numbers, dates, times, names. He's unbelievable, isn't he?
He's unbelievable. He is. He's like a computer.
Yeah.
Well, it's the Jeff Myers show today. Thank you very much. No, it was, well, I appreciate that from you because you know how important that is. You doing everything in your broadcast life, from the wonderful sports you did, how you must have the facts at your fingertips there, and all the shows you did, the financial shows. So you know how that works.
Well, not quite like you, though.
Well,
I
said.
I brought along my crib sheets.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about when you come out of the military, then after the time, you're doing radio there. What happens in your career at that point, that time frame?
Well, that was a funny time. When I came out of the military, like most young guys who had been drafted into the Army, I didn't want to go to work anywhere until my money ran out. And when my money ran out, excuse me, the only job I had available to me was the one I had before going in the Army. And I came back to Elgin and started working at WRMN again. And Betty had grown up, beautiful, fantastic woman. And before long, I was married, and I stayed here for a long time, did everything at the radio station, moved it to its present location down on Douglas.
You know, I heard a story. I want you to verify a story, because I heard it is at the same place, as you said it is now. And there was a man who had, there was like a jewelry store down below, still in those days.
Right.
Somebody was up top, the neighbor up top was digging a hole in the ceiling and trying to come away with the jewelry.
Oh my
so
gosh.
the owner said, well, Floyd, why don't you want to move that radio station? Why don't you move upstairs? I won't charge any rent for 3-4 months. We'll see how it goes, and then see if you like it. Is that a true story?
No, I don't know that story.
Oh, darn it. I heard that at a restaurant one night.
One of my dear friends owned that. I guess he still owns the building now. It was Curly Kubiak.
Yeah.
Kubiak Jewelers, Roush and Kubiak.
We saw
for
Curly
many
at the
years.
Image Awards recently.
That's right, he was over there. Curly sold, Betty and I have been married 44 years now, and he sold us our engagement ring, and I carry around a magnifying glass to show people what the stone was.
That's so very nice.
we got for it. Great guy, great memories. What do you want to know?
Well, we're trying to do it chronologically, because the next video we have from one of your speeches is just from recent times when you were introduced to Martin Luther King, and you tell about that in the next speech that we have coming away in just a couple minutes in the show. So I guess I'm looking, that's the mid-50s, so I'm just trying to place some of your activity in that 1955.
And into the early 60s. I went to Chicago, I think it was late 1962 that I went to Chicago. During that interim, we had a lot of experiences out here. We had Kennedy through town when he was actually
October of 60, and I just recently, October 25th of 60.
so he knows the name.
I heard from Betty recently that you're on the podium with Senator
Right,
Kennedy,
we have a picture.
and introduce him. You introduce him.
We had it somewhere. We had a picture and we recorded it.
She couldn't
for
find the picture.
WRMN. She couldn't find it.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, because I didn't even tell you this prior to the show. The other day, I don't have it with me now, but we did a show out at the Isaac Walton Lodge, and an old newspaper man brought some old photos. He didn't have a picture with you in it, but he had Mr. Kennedy at the podium with WRMN call letters in clear
right.
view.
That's right.
It's
Floyd
beautiful.
Brown was the engineer, and he put those call letters up there.
That's right.
My
That
claim
picture
to fame.
exists. Well,
It does exist, but it was good. We set it up right on Fountain Square, downtown, had a big podium there, and a big crowd came through, and it's not too often you got a big crowd for a
it was
Democrat
huge.
coming through Elgin.
because we did we got a picture off the side there that you can't see with the camera, but that's the crowd right there where you're at. And we did a story on the Weekend Review. Jerry Turnquist is a 6th grader, and he's in the class that comes out to see that. And young George Vandervoort's also there as
be
well. He
darned,
actually shakes
yeah.
Mr. Kennedy's hand.
Right. Yeah, he had a whole line of people, and he shook hands as they came through.
That's why we tie it together, because recently, with the end of the century, perhaps in any order, 1 and 2, often the favorite person is either John Kennedy or Martin Luther King. So you, Floyd Brown, Elgin man that you are, touched both, well, were in their lives to a
We
certain
got
degree.
it now. We knew where he was going.
Yeah,
That's all of it.
that worked better than rehearsal, didn't it?
We now find the line. You want a historical perspective. I thought maybe you wanted the development of WRMN.
Well,
something.
that's good too.
From a historical perspective, yeah, we were quite busy. During the 50s, and you probably got this in the speech that we had on Martin Luther King Day, during the 50s were real times of turbulence in the country because discrimination was just so extreme. We had apartheid here in the United States, and it was time for great change. In the 50s, when the Brown versus Board of Education law was finally adjudicated, Thurgood Marshall went before the Supreme Court, and they integrated the schools, saying that separate but equal was not true. You can't have separate and equal. It just didn't work in the country, and consequently, that opened the door for a great number of things. We had integration of schools, had integration of school staffs, and that was a time when Dr. King came north. He was going around the country. He had started the boycott down in Alabama, and had gotten national recognition for the things they were doing in Alabama at the time, and he wanted to solidify the organizations around the country who had organized to fight discrimination. And one of the most outstanding problems that we had at the time was housing. And I was head of a housing group here in Elgin, an interdenominational, interracial group. We saw how if you want to integrate schools, you can't all live separately. If you want to integrate churches, you can't all go to different churches. If you want to give people an equal opportunity at a job, you got to let them live where the job is. Dr. King came to Evanston. We had an opportunity to meet with him and
That
talk
would be
with him.
exciting.
Well, I'm going to tell you, it was exciting, but we didn't at that time know the magnitude of his impact on the nation. We knew he was doing a great job, and we were all involved to the extent we supported him, and we wanted to do what he was doing. We, wanted to do what he was doing in eliminating discrimination. But we all had our own challenges in our own community that we were fighting for and we were involved in. The movement had not yet really moved onto a national scale the way that it did prior to that. So meeting Dr. King was like meeting another guy who is involved in the same cause that you are. And when I met him, though, it was
Floyd,
truly
hold
exciting.
that thought, because you told that on Martin Luther King on the at ECC
Okay.
on that
Well,
day.
I don't know where you want me to
well,
go.
no, I want you led right up perfectly. I hate to
Okay.
interrupt the superstar that you are, but we have you telling us about that handshake in your speech from that day. So let's see that video that when Floyd meets Dr. Martin Luther King in Evanston in the mid-50s.
You knew when you met this man that you had met somebody truly special. I shook hands with him and I felt an electricity, really felt an electricity. I looked into his eyes and I saw a warmth and an understanding, but I saw a strength that came through. And when he talked, his words flowed with such conviction and such intelligence, such compassion, and also such strength. He could hold you spellbound, no matter what level you accepted your language as, from the highest, the most educated in the world, to the people who had never had any education.
There you have it. Marvelous speech that was.
Very
Boy, that
good.
was a little snippet, because you spoke for about 40 minutes on that Sunday at ECC, but it was very, you were called Dr. Brown because you were so historically correct for the great audience that was there. The Ron O'Neills were commenting on that, and Marvin Edwards.
Yeah.
Even our cameraman Mike was
All
impressed.
very fine people. Dr. Edwards has just been phenomenal to us here. And Ron O'Neill, I've watched his career since he's come to Elgin as well. They gave him the tough schools when he came to town, junior high and then high school, and he's just a phenomenal principal. And his wife, a fine educator as well. I have another addition, since you want me to lay a little continuity in what we're talking about with Dr. King, because we were talking, I don't know whether we were on camera or off camera, and you were talking about how exciting, I think it was your words, how exciting it must have been to have met Dr. King. I'm going to tell you how you really, I personally got the impact of him, and thank God for television. Because when he went back to Alabama and they moved beyond the bus boycotts and started to integrate lunch counters and started the marches that they were doing in the South, and they were being attacked by fire hoses and dogs and all the other things. It was just a turbulent time. And they put him on television, and the Chicago Sunday Evening Club brought him to Chicago. And they were broadcasting, doing television at the time. And it was the first time I really, truly learned the significance of his march, because this was very early in his leadership in the South. And it was kind of interesting because many years later they asked me if I would come on the Chicago Sunday Evening Club and give my personal testimony. And I expressed to them, I said, yes, I will, because I have great memories. That was the first place that I saw Dr. Martin Luther King in a full speech and given the opportunity to understand what he was really doing in the South. This was in the early days, and we weren't getting quite the press, and or it wasn't the news. It was on a religious program that they gave this young minister an opportunity to speak. And he won me over tremendously at that time. And today, I still do television programs for the Chicago Sunday Evening Club. I'm a trustee for that group, and it all started from the time, emanated from those times when I watched Dr. King on that program.
That's wonderful. That's a wonderful show that I know you're proud of to this
Very much
day.
so. The show itself, not in television because it hasn't been around, but it now has an 80-year history. It's the longest television of its type, television show of its type on the air. The program continuity is the longest in the nation. We have the 30 Good Minutes, on WTTW, the public station out of Chicago, but we're also on the Omni channel, so we're worldwide with that.
That's great.
And we have the great speakers from all over the world.
That's why we called you broadcaster to the nation in the opening, because you'll appear somewhere when your WGN radio days get into all the states, basically. So
don't forget the days I still am reminded by people of riding with me on United Airlines, where I did the comedy forum for about 15 years.
is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about
You
that.
guys didn't know that?
Tell me about that. Yeah, this
He
is
knew,
good.
I didn't.
I'm dumbfounded, Floyd.
You mean there's something about my career you don't know?
Let's hear it.
Well, no, it's no big thing. It's just that people fly, and a good friend of mine, we worked together at NBC, and later on he asked me to do the comedy for him, and I did a jazz segment for him as well. We used to tape these programs. Those are the early days of taping the programs on United Airlines, and he did them for all of the airlines eventually, and I was on another couple, but I was on United for the longest. And what I would do is play album cuts from specific artists, and we would record interviews with those artists and put them on the tape. So I had the opportunity to talk to some of the great comedians in the country at the time, and to play their music, and their not music, play their records, and it was fun because I'd see people and they would say, I just rode back from Hawaii with you, or I just rode back from California or New York. Yeah,
great.
It was a good time. It was a great experience.
It's like behind the music now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I remember United Airlines most is I'm growing up, they would, the 10th inning on the WGN, the baseball games, the 10th inning was United Airlines for many years.
That's right.
And that was, it always seemed like, boy, the game's over, I'm going to see an interview. So,
Okay,
I didn't say
you're tying in with United Airlines.
Yeah,
that was a live thing on WGN
Yeah.
you're talking about, where we did the 10th inning, and used to do I did some pre-games for the Cubs, but we always had the great broadcasters doing the Cubs games for all those years.
The Vince Lloyds and the Lloyd Pettits.
Lloyd Pettit, Vince Lloyd, Jack Brickhouse, just a wonderful group of people.
Well, those are some wonderful times. We're going to hear you a little bit. You recently got a wonderful award from the city of Elgin, an Image Award, which I remember when your name was put to it, I said, I know you'll win. I predicted that, didn't I?
Yeah, you told me about that, and that came as a huge surprise to me. I got to be candid with you and tell you that I really appreciate the award. Thank you very much, Elgin. Thanks to everybody who was a part of it. But I have never been, I appreciate it when I get them, but I've always been of the opinion that if you worry too much about awards, you're not getting the job done. And consequently, I've gotten a lot of awards over the years, but I'm so worried about what's going to happen tomorrow, I never stop to look back. But I want you to know that I truly am honored that they chose to give me the Image Award. I'm sure that there are a lot of people who are deserving, and I'm one of them. Thank you very much.
That's wonderful. You're going to tell us that in a moment. You're explaining the philosophy here at Jeff's Place. We don't win awards because we don't want to. Tell management
All
that.
you got to do is live long
That's
enough,
right.
Jeff, and then you come
We're
your
more
way,
concerned
you know?
about the show, Floyd. No need for awards. Well, we might as well show this little clip because it's the same line. What next is amplified in your Image Award little speech is your great humor in all situations, because you don't know what's coming up in the speech, but
No,
I use
I
a
have no
little
idea what
snippet
you're-
of it.
Oh, did you?
So we're going to roll that tape. Can we do that a couple of seconds early? This is Floyd just recently at the Elgin Image Awards, which was at the Fox Room of the pavilion of the Grand Victoria. Floyd accepting the award.
But I'm very happy to receive it. I have promoted the city of Elgin for 36 years in Chicago. You might not have known it. I've done it subtly. I've talked about our symphony. I've talked about our concerts. I've talked about our art. I've talked about all the wonderful things of living in Elgin. And one of them, of course, was living with Betty Brown. She told me, don't get too cocky now. Tomorrow is Friday, that's trash day. And it has to be out by 6:30 in the morning.
And the garbage has got to be out at 6:30. Very good. Betty, of course, is, if anyone can be almost as identifiable with Elgin as you are, Floyd, Betty's a close second in my mind.
Well, she's a close first.
She is legendary.
Yeah, she's a great person. She writes her column, and she's been involved in everything. We've been a marvelous team, and that we had to make a decision when I chose to go to Chicago back in the early 60s. She was supervisor of nurses at St. Joseph's Hospital in the evenings over there, and somebody had to be with the kids, and if I was going to go to Chicago. And we made a pact, and she came home at that time. And we were a part of a lot of organizations, but she continued in them, and she's been president of every organization available today, the PTOs, the Elgin Women's Club, you name them, right on down the line. She's just been a marvelous partner for a great number of years, and it's worked out very, very well.
I was with her for a radio show for 3 years on WRMN, and man, her book of folks to call up, Herb Kupson or something, it was exciting.
She loves people, and that's why she enjoys doing her column today. I try to tell her that she should slow down or something, and she tells me to mind my business.
She likes to keep active.
Yeah,
she is on a schedule that's wonderful.
Yeah, she really enjoys
She was
it.
in, we were doing a show with Mike Alft where Betty was in, was it Life magazine? She's mentioned in Life. I forget which major publication it was in 1984.
Was it Life or Time?
Time, might have been
magazine,
Time.
I
It was
think
connected
was,
with
yeah.
a pageant.
She used to be involved with the Miss America pageant.
Yeah.
She went to New Jersey each year with Miss Illinois. They were one of the people she worked with, Miss Illinois, and some areas of tutoring. They all had mentors to help them in certain areas, and she chaperoned and did a great number of things. And they would all go like college girls to New Jersey, and they would all sleep in single rooms and with bunks. And she, it was work, but she really enjoyed it. She loved it.
In 1993, when you had your golf tournament in Antioch, I drove her up there. So that was one of the highlights.
You really are.
Really?
I enjoyed that. I worked with Rotary, and we raised well over $100,000 in the years we were putting that tournament on, and a great deal of that money went to Rotary charities, and that was at a time when we were involved in trying to wipe out polio in the world, and that's one of the causes I have been very, very proud to have been a part of.
Wonderfully done. When you look at your broadcast career, I know you don't like to look back. Coach Ditka says it so well, but you broke the color line in many different ways. Here in Elgin in the housing situation, at WMAQ in that situation. What will stand out a little bit?
That was first in a million things, but never first in the pay line when it came there. I suppose one of the most significant things, actually, you're impressed a lot. You got to understand, when I was 21 years old or so when I came to Elgin and got a lot of responsibilities, no pay. But we did a thing at WYNR in Chicago. Gordon McClendon found out about me at WRMN and got me to come to Chicago. And I wasn't interested in leaving. How much time do I have?
I was finding out right now.
Okay, and so I'll make the story very quick.
Got 5 minutes. We got plenty of time.
I got plenty of time then. But what he wanted to do, he wanted to break into the Chicago market. And he could not get into the market because nobody would sell him a station. There was one station, I think it was WGSB. I think today it's WGCI AM. And he bought the station, and so as to appease the FCC, because it was being brokered to various ethnic groups, to appease them, he looked for the best announcers in the country that he could find who happened to be African American. And he brought guys in from all over the nation, and he came in, and to make a long story short, I was running the station there for him. And we were going against WLS in the days when WLS was at its pinnacle of popularity, and we were making tremendous inroads there. As a result of this, they looked at us from all over the nation, and we broke down a lot of color lines around the nation, gave people an opportunity to perform, and I feel very, very proud of that. That's good. Probably significantly the most Well, WGN, I did so many wonderful things, but in 1965, I really thought that I had made a mark. That was the year over at NBC, because I broke the line at NBC. Bill Cosby at the same time was given the role on I Spy, and so it was the first time an African American had been featured in any series on television. RCA owned NBC at the time, and Bill Cosby and I were featured nationally on their magazine. Wow. And I often say today, I should have taken up comedy or acting. Look where he is today.
That's right. He'd be the United Airlines comedian today.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you keep that publication? Because that would be a great collectible, Bill Cosby.
My mother had it. I don't have it. I told you, I never look back.
Oh, I do.
The only way you'll find anything that I have is you got to talk to Betty, but I don't have any.
All right.
I enjoyed it. I appreciate it.
You'd be making money for John Prigge auctions today if you had some of these things.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And your mom is 87 and still lives down in Dallas. I didn't know this until last week when you told us.
She lives in Dallas, and I'm about to take off to go down and see her. We lost her sister, and she's doing well at 87. She still gets around and just talk with her. She hurts a little, as you do when you get to be 87.
I can hardly move at my age.
But she won't. Nothing stops her. She's just a tremendous woman.
That's wonderful.
I love her.
Well, we only have a couple minutes left. Bob Collins, you would know as well as any working man, I would think, from your WGN days, or more than any other.
All 25 years he was at WGN. I knew Bob Collins, and he was just a phenomenal talent. Bob Collins kind of changed the culture at WGN. None of us, this is nothing personal or anything like that, but Bob Collins had been a rock and roll disc jockey, and he came in and he did not have a great voice. I think you'll all agree to that. And he was the first one to tell you, so I don't know what I'm doing here, and he did kind of all shucks attitude for what he was doing. But they hired me. Radio wanted me because WGN always has tried to find a younger audience, and they wanted someone who could handle the music. And the same thing, Bob Collins, 2 or 3 years later, come in the same thing. They're looking for a younger audience. But they didn't know what a real treasure they got in that guy, because he adapted to the talk format when he was there. And a lot of people might not know this, but Bob Collins was #1 in every slot that he worked in. The afternoons, he was #1 in the evening slot when he was there. And all of us wondered if he'd be able to take over the greatest morning man that we've ever known in the city, Wally Phillips, and to sustain. But he kept it, and he's been #1 every ratings book that he's had since he was on the air. And that's just a phenomenal accomplishment. My heart goes out to Christine, his wife. Can you imagine living with a guy? I'll tell you this quick story. He told me in the parking lot one time, it's less than a minute. He says, I said, Bob, you're getting married? He says, yeah, I am. He says, I told her she doesn't know what she's getting into. He said, because I'm not going to change, and she wants to get married anyway, and that sort of thing, because he's a true spirit. He loves his motorcycles and his bikes, and he's a little bit eccentric in some of the things that he does. But living with a person like that and then losing him must be really a great loss. And
very difficult.
Our heart goes out. They were very, very happy.
So quickly, and you know, it happened so suddenly like that. Well, Floyd, this has been our treat. You know that we spoke many times, and when I came to town 10 years ago, and you've always been an influence on my career
I
here.
hope positive.
Oh, yes. No question about that. And I've always tried to make sure I was doing something that you would approve of, broadcast-wise.
You're very kind. Thank you very much, Jeff. You are. You do a great job. You have continuity. I know how much work it takes to put together a program, and I've never seen anybody quite like you who does practically a one-man show. You're everywhere with everything that that the city is involved in, and you just do a great job.
Floyd, thank you very much.
You get better every year.
Well, I know I get older. I didn't know I got better. Floyd, congratulations on a wonderful career. Thanks for being here. Well, you are Mr. Elgin. That's going to be our Jeff's Place right there.
Okay, thank you very much,
Nice
Jeff.
job.
Pleasure, and to you too.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you here.
Thank you.
See how quickly.